On today's show, Paul George is officially gone. He is going to Philadelphia. The contract was insane, $212 million. And in this episode, going to be talking about what led to his departure, what the Clippers could have done, and trying to look at things from Paul's perspective. Where do the Clippers go from there? Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On. No more 2-1-3 Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, and finished my 19th season as a Clipper fan not too long ago. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper and LA sports content. Went live directly after the Paul George news to speak my mind on my channel and Locked On Clippers, where I also released an episode earlier Monday morning. So this will be the second episode released on Monday. As I said, I'm going to have you covered for all things Clippers offseason, and there was so much news this weekend, and I'm just not able to get all the points I want out and isolate each move and talk about them in one episode because it's only 30 minutes. So I'm going to try to just grind out the episodes and just throw them out there for you this week. No matter what day it is, we're just going. We're going to talk about every move, and I'm starting in order of what I feel is the importance of it. So this is going to be Paul George, and probably the last we're going to be talking about the specific move of Paul George to Philly. We'll reflect on his tenure as a Clipper. We'll talk about some of that stuff, how we should feel about him as a fan base, his 5 years relative to Kawhi's, or maybe even going back to relative to CP3's and looking at that. But in terms of the actual move after this will probably be the last I speak about how we lost Paul George. I mean, of course, I'm going to make references to it in a bunch of episodes in the future, probably for the rest of the time that Kawhi's here, but it's not going to be a whole episode dedicated to it. And speaking of episodes, this one is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now is a great time to bet on things on FanDuel, including baseball. Got the Euro Cup going on, Copa America. And the Olympics are coming up soon. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. But in this episode, as I said, it's about Paul George. There's a lot of other Clipper news to talk about. Russell Westbrook being shopped. You got Brandon Boston is no longer on the team. We picked up Derrick Jones Jr. So that stuff is all big news. James Harden getting re-signed will be the next place that we go, by the way, because as I said, levels of importance. After Paul George, the next act of business was what's going to happen with James Harden. We brought him back. Great deal. I'll do an episode on that. But let's talk about it, right? I released an episode earlier this morning that was recorded before the actual news became official that Paul George was going to be a Philadelphia 76er. Again, I am absolutely shocked about this all. I never thought when he signed 5 years ago and demanded a trade here, they would want to leave at any point, especially when the Clippers gave him everything he wanted. They gave him a huge contract after he choked in the bubble, and they rewarded him with all his friends that played point guard. Reggie Jackson, John Wall, Russell Westbrook, even James Harden, who he seemed to, I guess, not want to play with anymore. But the money is what spoke. And the money is the theme of this first segment. Why did we lose Paul George? We weren't going to offer him that much money. And I think every single Clipper fan, I really don't know one Clipper fan that thinks that we should have paid him that much money. I mean, that contract is absolutely outrageous. 4-year max worth $212 million. So Paul George will be getting paid $56.5 million as a 38-year-old. There's absolutely no way we should have paid that. Yes, it is a travesty to lose him for free after everything that we gave up for him. It absolutely is. And that's what stings the most. And that's what makes me be really mad at Paul, because he made all these promises that ended up being empty promises about what he wanted to accomplish for this franchise, what he set out to do. I mean, it's a huge disappointment. Huge. And I get it. It's hard to ignore that much money. If we were paying him, say, what was it, 3 years, $150 million. I mean, man, he's saying no to an extra $62 million there. That's a lot of money. So you can't really knock the guy, but you can knock the guy because at the same time, we're Clipper fans and fandom is emotional, and you came home and set out something that you were going to win a championship here. And here's the thing. I truly, and you might think I'm out, if you're a Philly fan watching this episode, because I know there's going to be some that come around and just see what I'm saying. Look, guys, I'm not trying to be harsh. I have nothing against the Philadelphia 76ers organization. One of the best all-time organizations if we talk about the history of basketball. But Paul George, I don't think he's going to win you a championship, 1. I think that's way too much money to pay him, 2. And 3, his goal, number 1, was not to win a championship. It's just to make money. Because, yes, I actually believe the 76ers have a better chance of winning than the Clippers. But here's the issue. Their number 1 option is a huge injury risk, just like ours. So Paul George went from one team that's, I need my number 1 option to be healthy, to another team that's, I need my number 1 option to be healthy, or it means nothing. The safety net, the thing that he really gets some help, where he gets some help is Tyrese Maxey in his youth. You know, as opposed to James Harden, that's huge. But that's really why I'm saying I think they're closer to a ring. Because if it was just Embiid and Paul George, like, how much better is that than Kawhi and Paul George? I mean, maybe a little. In the playoffs, I'm always taking Kawhi over Embiid. Embiid in the regular season, yes, is better now. But sorry, like, I'll stand on that. I think Kawhi Leonard is. But it's not like I'm anti-Embiid. It's mainly, I don't think there are many players in the league that are better than Kawhi in the playoffs. Like, I don't even think Kevin Durant is better than Kawhi in the playoffs. So, at least in recent times, since 2017, since Kawhi hit his prime. So ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, it's sad that we ended up here, that we lost Paul George for nothing. But would you have wanted to pay him that money? Because here's the thing. If you're wondering, why does Paul George want that 4th year so bad? Well, $62 million ain't nothing to scoff at. But also, there's the over 38 rule now, which is a provision in the NBA's new collective bargaining agreement that limits teams from offering contracts lasting 4 or more years to any player who is at least 38 years old or will turn 38 during the contract. So there you go. He got the max. He had the ability to get it. He's not going to get a better chance than this to get this money. $212 million. He's going to leave his family. His parents won't be able to be at every game. His second longest tenure with any NBA team, LA Clippers. 7 years in Indiana, 2 years in OKC, 5 years with the Clippers, and as of now, it says 4 years with Philly. Let's see how it goes. I mean, the thing is, he's such an injury risk, too, to pay that much money as well. He just came off a very healthy season, though, so we'll see. And maybe just the going away from the bad luck of the Clippers will help him in that regard, but I don't know, man. That's a lot of money, and I stand by the franchise's decision not to pay him. And again, if you're wondering why, it goes back to that new collective bargaining agreement again. Teams that go above the second apron, which we would have been with that contract, have no access to any mid-level exception, which is what we're going to be using to supplement the roster now that Paul's gone. I can't believe I'm saying that, now that Paul's gone, in 2024, as your host. Man, we're going to be heading into this is the second offseason I've had technically the third offseason I've had as a host, because I did do offseason pods when I first took over. So I'm excited, man. I mean, just enjoying building the family of Clipper fans. I know a lot of people aren't going to rock with me and not love my style, not love the fact that I am a solo host. I get it. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but those of you that have, appreciate you, man. Let's keep rocking. No Paul George. The Paul George fans are going to stop listening probably, but that's okay. We're here for the long term, man. We always have been, and that's my goal, and that's what I want to show is, like, this is forever for me, you know? So when I argue with certain people about players, I don't get too married to any one player. And if I do, it's because, man, they've done a lot. Let's talk about other things about the new CBA as to why we didn't pay Paul George that money. Can't aggregate contracts in trades. Can't send cash in trades. So, again, it's just limiting you trade-wise. Can't acquire players when they sign and trade their own free agents elsewhere. Can't acquire players when they sign and trade their own free agents elsewhere. Okay? And then this is the one that was the ultimate killer. Can't trade a first-round pick 7 years in the future, and that pick falls to the bottom of the first round if a team is over the second apron at least twice in a 4-season span. The second apron didn't exist in the previous CBA. This is a new way to prevent teams from... This is an article I'm quoting, Bleacher Report. This from 2022, I believe. Is it 2022? No. 2024, June 29th. Wow, it's very recent. So because everyone's going through this now, right? And it says this is a new way to prevent teams from running up their payrolls in the pursuit of titles. The problem I have, though, is that it limits teams from re-signing their own players, which with that whole bird rights rule, that made it so that you can overpay for your own guys to keep them together. And yeah, you would go over the luxury tax, but like this stuff is just crazy. Yeah, so when it means aggregation restriction, teams over the second apron can't combine salaries to acquire a bigger contract. They have to have like exact matching salaries. They can only take back equal or less for any player they send out. So, yeah. Apparently, if those rules existed last offseason, Boston couldn't have gone Porzingis or Holiday, according to this article. So, it's crazy, man. We didn't want to have those restrictions. We already don't have our picks coming up, right? I really wonder how many teams are going to be over the second apron. If it's multiple teams that are going to fall to, like, you can't have multiple 30th picks, right? So is someone going to get 29, someone going to get 30, or are no teams going to be above the second apron because of that? I think there are going to be teams that are. But here's the thing. So we were over the second apron this year. If we are over it next year, that's already twice in a 4-season span. So that's why we didn't want to be involved with that. So we'll see how the Clippers fill out their roster elsewhere. We talked about Derrick Jones putting us at the first apron. But again, I'll have more details on that and what that means coming up. But up next, what could we have done to keep Paul George? Was there anything we could have done? Going to be talking about that coming up. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I love sports. I can't lie. It's my favorite thing in the world. But in the summer, things change a little bit. You don't have basketball. You don't have hockey, even though I don't watch that much hockey throughout the regular season. I love the Kings, though. It's mainly international soccer tournaments, if it's that kind of summer, and baseball. And thankfully, this summer, we've got the Olympics. FanDuel this summer is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And if you want to play some bets on FanDuel, head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right. Back here talking about the departure of Paul George. Why did he leave? Well, it's obvious. The money. Why didn't the Clippers pay him? Didn't think he was worth going over that second apron for. Oh, and here's the thing. If Paul George was a more reliable basketball player, even when healthy, then maybe they would have been willing to do it. Because he has been more available than Kawhi, even though it's not as much as people really think. He has been more available. But when he's on the court, he leaves a lot to be desired. And then he goes on his podcast and has these quotes. Then he flip-flops in what he wants. You know, he talked about he was being used too much off ball after the bubble. Then in 2023, he was saying it's not easy to have Drew Holiday picking me up full court. And, you know, it would be nice to have a break from that. And it's like the balance, I guess we could never find for him. We don't even know if there is a balance for him. It's just when he's playing well, he's going to say it's great. When he's not, he's going to make a bunch of excuses. That's what we learned about Paul George in his time. And look, I'm blessed and honored to have been the host for one of the great Clippers of all time, one of the significant Clippers of all time, and one of the great, you know, talented players in the history of the league. Like, he might be a Hall of Famer. Who knows? He has a very good case. And I'm happy to have been here and covered them as much as anyone. Like, I probably was as close to watching this team as anyone, you know, maybe besides the beat writers themselves. So I think that was just a pleasure. I just want to say, weird moment to say that, but let's just say this. What could the Clippers have done to keep Paul George? Now, first, let's ask the question, do they want to keep Paul George? Yes, I think they do. Why? Because they are committed to Kawhi Leonard and trying to maximize the fact that we, the LA Clippers, have never had a player like this. We have never had a player that's been the best player on a championship team, clear-cut, and gotten them in their prime, but they have the ability to potentially get us there with their abilities. We're not just going to give up on him, even though if a lot of people, and it's very warranted, including myself, think, look, it's hard to believe that this guy's going to stay healthy. We got to move on. But we gave up all our picks for Paul George. And we're going into a new stadium. So it's like, do you want to open up a new stadium with no stars in a city like LA who begs for stars? And a franchise like the Clippers, who are the second team in LA. But again, a brand new stadium in a city that breathes basketball, I just think it doesn't matter who's playing. People are going to be interested. Like, it's been enough years after COVID that people aren't as scared. Because I remember right after COVID, there was a real hesitancy for people to go back to live games. Like, there really was. We've been far enough removed from that. I feel as though I'm not saying we're going to sell out every night, but I don't think it's going to be a crazy attendance issue. Even if we didn't have Kawhi, even if we were rebuilding. And I think so many Clipper fans are excited for something new and want, Kawhi and Paul George to be gone that they would be excited. But I think there is a level of excitement that's going to be coming up this summer that we no longer have Paul George in the sense that we changed. I don't know if we're going to be better. Right now, I don't think we are going to be better. But we have changed. We have done something. They did stand up for something and stood their ground and didn't just let Paul George get what he wanted. So I believe they wanted to keep him though, right? But they wanted to keep him under their terms, which was you're not going to get an extra year more than Kawhi. We're not going over the lugs of the second apron. Now, the question some people are wondering, did Paul George get offered a 4-year deal that was around the ballpark of $160 million? And I just think whether he did or didn't, he was probably like, I can get so much more in Philly. Like, that's a joke. Like, I'm not doing all that. So he was very adamant about what he wanted due to what I said in the first segment. And the Clippers were adamant that they shouldn't give him that. So the only other explanation is that, look, the Clippers weren't going to re-sign Paul George this summer. The sad part is when we're looking at a rebuild and stuff like that, which I'm looking at further down the line, the Clippers seem to not be. But in the back of their mind, they have to be. You got to get something for Paul George, a guy you gave up the farm for. Of course, that implied you were getting Kawhi as well, but you gave up. Kawhi is making you basically give up all these things for his star that he wanted, his friend. I really am curious as to what Kawhi thinks of all this. If he's just like okay with it, it's like, how badly do you want to win a championship then, man? Because I don't think this helps your chances. If it's on some just like he's a grown man, he's going to do what he does, it's like, okay, you guys always, people like KD say these things, like who are not, they're guys that don't pull. You know what I mean? And like, again, I just think I like guys that do when it comes to leading your franchise. I'm just disappointed we didn't get anything for Paul George. After all that, like, one thing I left out of the last episode that we need to talk about is the Golden State Warriors negotiations. Because it's very clear that Paul George is willing to go to Golden State. However, there was an article released by Tim Kawakami of The Athletic, who's a Warrior beat writer, and from what I know, has very good relationships with Lacob and the Warriors front office, saying that the Warriors offered a package that involved a combination of Kuminga, Moses Moody, a first-round pick, and I believe Andrew Wiggins. Or I don't know if this was before Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul was involved as well. But those other names I mentioned were in that article. And everybody just took it as to combining them all together and saying that was the package. The Clippers said, no, dude, Clippers front office is a joke. You think the Clippers wouldn't have taken Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody? No, I think they absolutely would have. I believe in another article, I think his name was Brett Siegel, reported or tweeted. The Clippers weren't the ones that were saying no to Kuminga. The Warriors didn't want to give him up. So if you're not getting Kuminga, Do you just take on Andrew Wiggins' contract, which is not great, or CP3's, for Moses Moody and a first rounder? As opposed to maybe having the cap space to get a Derrick Jones Jr. who we got. It's not, how much worse is it, you know? If you're not getting Kuminga, then it's not really, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that we got lost him for nothing, if we're being real. We were kind of stuck. Let me know what you think of that in the comments, though. Would you have preferred I mean, I would have loved the first round pick, I can't lie. I would have really loved the first round pick. So maybe I would still have taken it. But what do you think? That's a question for you in the comment section. Do you think we should have taken Moses Moody? Let's say Kuminga wasn't involved. Moses Moody, take on a bad contract like CP3 or Wiggins, and then a first rounder? Or what we're doing is like getting Derrick Jones. We'll see who else we get. But I say we probably will get another role player too. Will we get a star? Will we get one of those guys that everyone's talking about? Like DeRozan, Klay Thompson. I think by the time I even release this, one of them may be gone. Levine, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. It's going to take some moving of salaries like Westbrook or PJ Tucker. We need to get rid of PJ Tucker's salary. That would be a huge W if we can do that. But coming up, where do we go from here? I guess I'm already getting into it, but where do we go from here now that Paul George is gone? Going to be talking about that coming up. All right, the 2-1-3 era has come to an end after 5 years. You know, before I do reflection episodes on it all, why it went so wrong, maybe looking at Paul George's resume as a Clipper compared to others. This is our episode we got to talk about all the stuff this week that's happening. And starting with the most important thing is that Paul George left. Talked about why he left. It's the money. Winning a championship for the Clippers was not huge on his priority list. I don't think winning a championship, period, is that high on his priority list. What could we have done? As I said, I don't think much. I think the other alternative was accepting an offer from the Warriors that would have made us take on a bad contract. And what's it called? Get a first rounder. But I mean, what I would have been curious of is if we're taking a contract to replace Paul George, would we then still be over the second apron? I believe we may have been. So that, again, that's what they wanted to avoid in every single way. Now, where do we go from here? See, I'm team blow it up, but they're not going to do that because they're entering a new stadium and they want to stay competitive. So they pledged their loyalty to Kawhi and said, you know what? No matter what, we are going to have Kawhi start out the Intuit Dome era. And once they saw how once they traded for James Harden, I think they basically were like, okay, we're going to be willing to pay him unless it goes horrifically wrong. And they know that James Harden is a floor raiser. Just having James Harden on your team, from James Harden's resume, he's never missed the playoffs. He's literally made the playoffs every year of his career. So by definition, having James Harden so far has meant playoffs. And opening up your new stadium, you want to be a playoff team for monetary gains, for the business side of things. Now the question is, how invested are Clipper fans going to be? I think there's a large section of us that are just over it. There's no point in caring when it's all about Kawhi's health. Some never wanted James Harden, and despite how well he did, they want to see us get younger. They don't want the old, stars. But then there's another section that are going to be supportive of whatever the Clippers do and are going to be very optimistic no matter who's on our team, that are going to be, feeling good about the fact that, look, Paul George, he always made excuses. He's going to be out now. Now it's Kawhi and Harden. We're going to surround him with some good role players and see where we go from there. Who knows? Maybe we get a lower third star that's a downgrade from PG, but still solid, like DeRozan, Levine, or any of those guys I mentioned earlier. I just don't think that's a championship or a real contender. So that's why I don't think it's special or it gets me that excited. I will say it gets me more excited than if we were to just run it back with Paul next year. It does get me more excited. What do I think is a better team? The one with Paul. What gets me more excited? This team that's probably worse. Why would I get more excited for a worse team? Because neither of them are going to win the championship, and I want to see some change. I want to talk about something different. So, if you're just picking how you lose, why not pick what I like? That was my whole thing with James Harden. It's I never believed we were going to win a championship before, and with James Harden, I also don't believe we're going to win a championship. So why would I want to, see a guy who I know is going to make us probably have a better regular season record, but I don't like the way he plays and all that. I've talked about it enough. But next episode, we're going to talk about James Harden's contract. And you know what? He gained some points for me for signing that contract. And it was very team-friendly. Very team-friendly. So, salute to him on that. I think he's been very good about all the things that he said for the most part as a Clipper. And his actions have backed up his words for the most part. 90% of it. I mean, the only quote that really disappointed me was there's no pressure before Game 6. Because I was like, I mean, I get it. We don't have Kawhi. But, like, guys, like we traded for you. We're all-in win-now team. So that just kind of irked me. But compared to Paul George, I mean, Paul George has 5 years worth of quotes. So James Harden will have his first full training camp as a Clipper, and I think there's a chance that he has his best season since, I mean, I don't know how much better it could be than 2023. That was a pretty damn good season. But maybe his best since pre-hamstring, I would hope. I think he's averaging 20 and 10 again next year. Maybe not 10. 20 points, 8 assists, 5 boards on 44, 37, 86 splits. See, I don't want to do all the stat predictions yet because that'll be in episodes for the coming months. But where we go from here, right? How do we fill out the roster? I say with Derek Jones, we got somebody that can guard at the point of attack. If we can, I think that's fine there. We got to obviously replace Mason Plumlee, who just signed with the Phoenix Suns, which, again, I guess we'll talk about that in a coming episode. Now, we're not going to dedicate an episode to that, but that's good. We didn't want Plumlee back. He was too old, too poor defensively. So Kai Jones, I know a lot of Clipper fans have been talking about Kai Jones. I want to see him. Is he ready to be a backup center on a team that is going to advertise championship aspirations? Because that's what Kawhi is. Kawhi still wants to be on a team that is competing for a championship, which, again, I'm wondering how he's taking this Paul George stuff. Unless he truly believes that we can still compete without him and not even getting another star. Or maybe he's begging for a third guy that can score behind the scenes. Because the thing is, he's going to load manage this year. The Clippers are going to load manage him. I don't have a 100% source on that, but from everything we've heard and seen, it's very logical and likely that they're going to do that. I don't think that's going to prevent Kawhi from being healthy necessarily. I think luck will prevent Kawhi from being healthy. Or Kawhi from being injured. I think luck. Good luck. That we haven't had since he's been here, really. And he hasn't had since he's been here. But getting a backup center with some athleticism, if they can stretch the floor even better, and then a big four. That's what we need. Derek Jones is still a little too skinny for that. And then we could be solid. So that's what I have on this one. Paul George is gone. He accepted a better contract in Philly. Are we gonna? Is it addition by subtraction? I guess we'll do another episode dedicated to that. We got plenty of time. Now we got way more offseason material to talk about for me, so I can't get out enough episodes at this point. Second episode of the day. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to probably try to release another one before the end of the night, talking about James Harden and what his team-friendly deal means. The age-old proverb. Oh, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, where I went off about Paul George. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Here for the long haul, baby. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.